All right, good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and call the Committee on Revenue and Economic Development to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
There we go. Okay. Senator Buck?
Here.
Senator Doñate? Here. Senator Severs-Gansert? Here. Senator Spearman?
Here.
Chair Neal?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So today we're just going to have presentations on the Clark County Sales and Use Tax of 2005 and the Clark County Crime Prevention Act of 2016. We're going to go in order of the agenda. We'll call Mesquite Police Department to the table. Huh? Oh. Oh, yeah, I forgot. So Boulder City, we'll have Boulder City Chief Shea come forward because he has to leave early. Chief Shea, if you could come to the table.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Can you see the presentation?
I cannot. There we go. I can now.
Okay, good.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for letting me go first. I told you about I have a wife going through surgery right now and I have to leave, so. I'll start right out with the first slide here. So in the late summer of 2017, it was the first time we used the NTN network. And as you can see what we've done from 2019 to 2022, we had about 104 lateral entry applicants, 91 passed the test, and our COVID impacts really impacted our ability to bring in entry-level people and getting them into academies. Next. So out of the 91 entry-level candidates, 28 came to the physical fitness test. Again, COVID really impacted it. 21 showed up, about 84% of whom we invited, and 19 passed. But in that 21 that showed up, a couple of them were laterals, and both of the out-of-state laterals passed the test too. Next. On the entry level of the type 19 candidates, 6 were disqualified, 7 withdrew. 2 completed the process and were hired. 2 are still in the background process, and 1's completed the process and on the eligibility list and will be attending the academy in the end of April. Next. On the lateral side of the house, we had 18 candidates start the process, 8 disqualified, 2 withdrew, 6 completed the process and were hired, and 2 are still in background. Next. So, one of the things, the questions you asked about hiring people for the, and the makeup of the people we hire for the revenues. Because of the way we manage our positions, we did not have a single vacancy in either of those revenue areas, either for more cops or crime prevention. All of our vacancies were in the general fund. But I included the makeup of the personnel we've hired since 2020. I didn't have it for 2019. So we've hired 1 Asian male, 1 Pacific Islander male, 1 black male, 1 white female with a second starting in April, and 3 white males. But again, none of them were hired for the special revenue, but I thought it was worthwhile to show you what we've done, trying to work in on diversifying our department a bit. Next. And the reason we do it this way is we take our personnel, and when there's a vacancy in the more cops or the general fund, we move the highest paid more cops or crime prevention officer into the general fund position. And this shows what it costs us for an average year for a top step officer. It's about, right now it's about $219,000 for a top step officer. That's everything. That's all the support costs, salary, benefits, and everything else. Next. This shows what a lateral entry officer costs us in the first year. And unlike the other agencies, our personnel reach their top step in 4 years. If they start at first level, our laterals start at second step, so they're at top step in 3 years. Next. And this is a cost estimate of a person going to the academy, a police recruit. So a police recruit is not a police officer. They're not in fire and police. They're in regular PERS. Their sole job is to go to the academy. So once they graduate the academy, they're then sworn in as a police officer. They begin their 12-month probationary period as a police officer, and then they move into the 5-month training program. But this is the cost, the average cost for a new recruit going through into the academy and then coming out of the field training program. Next. This shows you the annual estimate for the different levels of officers, and it again shows you why we're moving people. Top step officer and what we save. So lateral versus a top step, we save $35,000 a year. There's a word mistake here. Cost savings for the academy recruit officer versus top step is $87,000 a year, and the cost savings for the academy recruit versus a lateral is $52,000 a year. So that by moving them, it gives us the ability to make greater use of the money we're getting from those more cops and crime prevention tax sources, because we view those as the most volatile taxes that we have. And if we have to reduce staffing because of our labor contracts, we have to let the junior people go. And our junior people are in those funds. And there's also benefit to our general fund when we do that. So this next one shows how much money we have received from More Cops since its inception. And at first you say, well, my gosh, it looks pretty good. We're getting 1.2 million. Except that when you compare the last box, $2,007 versus 2023, the $751,000 is equal to 1.09 million now. So in true spending, we are only 19% above where we were in 2007, which is one of the reasons we have not added any positions to More Cops. We have the same number of More Cops that were listed in 2007 we have now, because again, we've only seen a 19% increase in real spending ability because of inflation. Next. And that shows the same thing with the crime prevention funds. Next. So this is our 2019 expenditure under More Cops. And one of the things to notice as you go down through salaries, overtime, and benefits, when you head down to equipment and vehicle maintenance and all this, each of our personnel are issued patrol vehicles. Each officer has a take-home patrol vehicle. So our costs are a little bit higher when it comes to vehicle cost and equipment because they're all outfitted with cameras and computers and rifles and everything else that goes with a car. But you notice there's virtually no expenditure there. When the economy got bad in 2008 and 9, the city, rather than shedding positions as the funding dropped, the city absorbed all of the support costs into the general fund. And it remained that way up until 2019. Next. Same thing in crime prevention. If you notice, there's zero expenditures there. Also no expenditures in capital. In 2020, next slide, same thing is going on, and there's a slight payment out of there for some support costs. That was one of the first years we took a little bit out. And you can see at the bottom, we still have a positive balance at the end of the fiscal year going into the fund balance. And the capital there is because we replaced 2 patrol vehicles that have been bought with More Cops funding in 2013. Our patrol vehicles last about 7 to 8 years. So we track the vehicles that were bought with More Cop funding, and when we have sufficient funds in our fund balance that allows us to replace those vehicles, we do. And there are none slated to be replaced for about 4 more years. So we don't have any major capital looming in the horizon for our more cops or crime prevention funding. Again, 2020 crime prevention, you can see we had a negative fiscal year balance. That negative fiscal year balance was made whole by using the existing fund balance at the time. And when we budget, we do not budget based on the amount of money we anticipate receiving. We budget on our anticipated costs. And as long as we have a fund balance for each fund, we have enough of a cushion that we don't have to be concerned that we might receive less money than we would spend in a given year. Next. 2021, same thing. You see the more cops started picking up a little bit more in the support. No capital. Same thing for crime prevention, except that once again, we were in negatives for 2021 in crime prevention for a fiscal year balance. Still had money in the fund balance, but we went into a negative again, and there was no capital that year. And the city did pick up a little bit of the cost for vehicle equipment and maintenance support for 2021. 2022, now you can see that as the funding was improving, we were able to pick up more of the support costs for vehicle maintenance, fuel, and things like this out of the More Cops Fund, and still have a positive fiscal year balance at the end of the year, just for the year. And of course, anything that's left over goes into our fund balance. 2022 with More Cops, the thing that happened with More Cops or crime prevention is that I made some personnel staffing moves. And by making some personal staffing moves, we're able to reduce the costs there significantly in the crime prevention for FY20. That'd be the next slide. So we went in from that year to a positive end of year fiscal balance, which then almost virtually repaid all of the money we had removed from the fund balance the previous years where it was in the red. So we were moving back up into the black for the fund balance. Next. This is the estimates for FY23 where we are right now, and you can see that the equipment and so forth, we're again moderating the costs in there as we moved a couple vehicles out, and the newer vehicles, of course, don't need as much maintenance, and there's things under warranty compared to the old vehicles. So if everything works according to what I hope and planning on, we will spend about 72% of the money that we will receive this year for from the county's estimate on how much money we receive from the tax. Next. Same thing with crime prevention. And you can see that our costs there are pretty low. The reason is the person that's in the two people are in there right now. One is a police recruit who's in the academy, and the other one is a brand new officer who just got out of the academy last year. So their personnel costs and everything are pretty low. And we're at about 43% of the expected revenues where we are for expenditures for that fund. So that's really good, which allows us to put money into the fund balance to pay for some looming capital that's going to be coming up in the next 2 years for that. Next slide. This shows our current fund balance for both funds. So there's $974,000. Of course, it's going to go up after the end of this fiscal year because we'll have a positive fiscal year fund balance. It'll go up to about 1.1, maybe 1.2 million in more cops. Crime prevention will also go up probably by about another 130,000. And that's it. Did I make it within 15 minutes?
Yeah, thank you for that. Members, any questions? So I have a couple of questions. I know you have to go. So on the disqualifiers at the beginning, like what are the common reasons for folks being disqualified? And I think I'm more interested in, we passed legislation in 2019 to eliminate marijuana I believe it was Assemblyman McCurdy's bill. And so I'm wondering, what are the common disqualifiers for the folks that you've had in those first couple of slides?
Yeah, no one's been disqualified because of that. Again, coming from Washington State, we grappled with that long before Nevada did. And legal behavior is legal behavior. So no one was disqualified for that. Most of our disqualifications are on the lateral side. We find that they've had disciplinary problems in their other agency, or we find people that shotgun their applications out to agencies all over the region or even multiple states, and they have significant disqualifying records that under post-route regulations and rules. That's normally where we find things. Again, on laterals, we're very, very careful. If you're dissatisfied with the agency you're at now, you're probably going to be dissatisfied with the agency you're going to in a short time. I got a lot of experience with lateral entry personnel and making sure we're not hiring rogue cops, people that are running away from disciplinary problems in other parts of the country. So that's usually what disqualifies people. I think it's pretty standard for most of the agencies around here. It's we've had some folks that have come to us and admitted that they've been to rave parties in the last few months where they've used Oxycontin and things like that, and we're not going to take folks for behavior like that.
Thank you for that.
And I know you asked a question about recruits and recruits leaving. We've had no recruits leave, none at all. We've had one that could not pass probation, just couldn't make it through field training, but we've had nobody leave us in recruit status.
And then my next question, you were saying that more cops, the sales tax is actually one of the least stable. And I guess I had more of an interest in, from 2020 to now, at the state level, we've seen sales tax actually increase. It's actually grown in a significant way. And so I guess I just assumed that, that filtered down to the locals. And then I guess the question that I don't know the answer to is whether or not, when there is a increase in sales tax, is there a responsibility to share some of that sales tax growth with the more cops actual statute or the law that basically funds cops through that mechanism? And that's what I don't know.
Well, Boulder City is rather unique in the way our structure is set up. It's got a very low property tax rate, but we also have very high revenues from stable lease sources for energy, for solar panels and things like that. So when we look at the volatility of the money that we receive into the police department, both for the general fund and the sales tax revenue we receive, or the consolidated tax money, and I look at sales tax as the most volatile, because if we have another recession like 2007 or 8, or how COVID impacted us and they went down, I look at it as potentially the most volatile. And therefore, if we have to shed personnel in any fashion, even if it's not more cops, we have to shed our junior people first anyway. So that's what and plus keeping our junior people in there allows me to maximize those revenues and not have them supplanted by the general fund like the city was doing, and also provide us an ability to build up a capital fund nest egg so that when it comes to replacing capital items, we do have them. And right now, we've got it to the point where we know we got to replace some vehicles in a few years. And because each of our officers are issued a vehicle, we issue the vehicles to the position, not to the individual officer. So there are 5 vehicles issued into marked patrol units into more cops, 2 issued in crime prevention. And all the equipment that goes to it are tagged to the position, not to an individual.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then just a final question, and then I'll let you go. I noticed Boulder City has had some significant growth in their population, or when you compare probably 10, 20 years, because a lot of people are moving out that way and kind of like in between that border. And so can you talk a little bit about that in terms of, is there an increased need? Yeah. Yeah,
the population growth out there is very small. they have a growth ordinance that they passed some years ago, long before I showed up there. They only allow so many housing units to be built in a given year. I think it's 60 at the most, if they allow that. It's interesting, we have a 1975 study where at the time, the state estimated the population of Boulder City in the year 2000 to be 15,900. They were right on the mark, but they thought the population of Nevada was going to be 989,000. So they kind of missed that one a little bit. So the population is fairly stable out there. I think one of the problems that the city has is attracting young families with children, because the housing is so expensive there. So we have a lot more retired folks than you'd see percentage-wise for many of the other areas. Again, we only have 2 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and a high school. And it's just, you don't see a lot of growth there. The city's 200 and some odd square miles, but the people all pretty much live in the same area they've always lived in.
So thank you for that. I think, I guess when I look at like where it was, and like when you drive to Boulder, mainly you're probably going there for very random reasons, such as the Veteran Cemetery. But it seemed like there were more people like building houses into the mountain and trying to get as close to the Arizona line as possible. And so I saw over a period of time, like there's actually like a lot more activity than I guess I'd seen in the past. But I just wanted to ask that. But with that, I thank you for your presentation. It was super detailed. And then I hope your wife is going to be okay.
Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate you giving me the consideration of going first so I can go there and have her yell at me.
Thank you for coming. And so we will go to Mesquite, Chief Everett or Averett.
Good afternoon. Deputy Chief Quinn Averett, the Mesquite Police Department. With me is Kim Otero with the Police Department. She's our records and evidence manager. Are you able to see the presentation on the screen? Very
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
All right. I'm kind of new to this, so bear with me. But if you don't mind, I'll give you a quick synopsis of the Mesquite Police Department. We're kind of unique like Boulder City, whereas we are up in the northeast corner of Clark County, kind of remote from the rest of the valley. Our community is a community that thrives on retirement and golf and sporting events that come to town and tourism and so forth. Our current situation with the police department, we have 31 sworn police officers on the streets, and we have 8 working in our correction facility. Out of that, we've got 7 more cops officers and 2 crime prevention officers, a total of 9. In 2019, the police chief, McQuaid Chesley, was put in place there as the police chief, and with that, the new administration of myself and the other Captain Jordan Bundy. And one of our goals taking over in 2019 was kind of to grasp the situation with the More Cops funding and how it works, learn it, and so that we can be fiscally responsible and good stewards of the money. In 2019, we began what we would call an ongoing recurring recruitment that we started in 2019 for lateral police officers. Our Human Resources Division does a pretty good job of disseminating that out nationwide, and that has been ongoing recurring recruitment since 2019. It hasn't closed, and we continually get recruits, lateral requests from all over the country. In 2021, we did a new recruit testing process, and during that testing process, we had 30 applicants who were invited to take the physical test who applied. And out of those 30 applicants, we had 8 applicants show up for the hiring, for the physical test, correction. And of those 8, we were able to hire 4 officers. Currently, our more cops officers that we hired, we've got since 2018, there were 6 total. I forgot to include that in 2018, we did another recruitment for new hires, and out of that, we had 60 that were invited to the physical test and 30 who showed up for that test. And we had 5 males that we've hired that were new recruits, and 1 female. Out of those 5 males, 2 Hispanic and 3 Caucasian, and the one female Hispanic. On the next page, on our More Cops funding since 2018, as we've been able to watch the fund and kind of figure out how it works and how we're going to best utilize the funding, you can see from 2018 and 2022, we've kind of been steady on the collections of the more cops and the crime prevention with slight increasing. With that, we've been able to slowly grow our fund to the point where, 2 years ago, we did purchase 2 vehicles. Like Boulder City, our police officers have take-home vehicles, and our more cops positions, we fill those position and not officer. And what I mean by that is, for example, 2 years ago, we had 2 officers who were more cops who requested to transfer into our correctional facility and work in there. So that position stays on patrol, that officer moves, and we refill those positions with new hires, new recruits into those positions. And with that, there you have a vehicle. So we were able to purchase 2 vehicles 2 years ago for them. We are now in the process of looking at purchasing the other 7 more cops officers with 7 vehicles out of that fund. We are also in the process of looking at creating a new position with more cops. And the budgeting process we're in right now, we are looking at 2 new positions that we are going to fund through the city. And if that is to go through, we will have the funding, we believe, to also fund a new more cops position. Our annual budget is slightly increased each year from 2018 from $7,017,231 to $8,251,109. That's our total police budget. That would be personnel and operating combined. Each year, what had been done in the past administration, what we've followed so far is we will budget $1 million each year for the More Cops Fund and $300,000 for the Crime Prevention Fund. And that way we're able to keep some money in there and make sure that we have enough to cover vehicles and operating supply purchases that we need to be making in the near future. On the 3rd page, on question number 11, how many recruits, transfers, leaves being newly hired and within which time period? Of the new recruits we've hired since that 2018 and the 2021 testing, we've had 4 that have left, 2 that have been terminated, 1 that have resigned, and 1 that transferred to another agency. Again, as we are kind of unique in Mesquite, where we're kind of rural, as you can see, we're not as large as a lot of the other agencies, with the 9 more cops positions and the other 31 that are sworn on the road and 8 in the correctional facility. We feel like we're doing a good job of being good stewards over that money and learning how to best use that tax funding for our operating expenses for the more cops officers as well as our personnel expenses. And with that, I'll end my presentation and open it up to any questions if you have any.
Thank you for your presentations. Members, any questions? Senator Spearman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess I'm looking at the failure rate for those that go through the academy or when they first start. Why the failure rate? Because it seems a little high. Maybe I'm mistaken, but and that'd be one. And then on page 3 here, where you've got breakdown of why people leave, or 25 transferred, 25 just quit their job, and then 50% were terminated. Can you just kind of explain that? Do you all do, I guess what I'm asking is, do you do any type of an exit interview? When someone quits, is there an exit interview that kind of shows you what's
Yes,
going on?
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for those questions. Those three questions, I'll do my best to answer all three. The first one, I believe, was the failure rate. The number of invited to the physical test is a lot for our department, being where we're geographically located, kind of isolated from the valley. We're also right on the border with Arizona and Utah. And we also compete for recruits and laterals from the southern Utah area, which are paying similar to what we pay. So we compete with them, and we have to compete with the Las Vegas Valley police departments, who pay significantly higher than we do as well. So our numbers are a little lower on the invites to the physical test. As far as how many passed, it is a rigorous physical test, and we have struggled to get recruits that come that are prepared to pass that test. What we use is the regular Nevada Post standard physical test for the academy. If they pass that physical test, then they move on to the oral board interview and then the background phase. And of those 8 in 2021, 4 did pass both the oral board and the background interview phase, and we were hired. On to I believe it was your second question. Of those 4, 50%. It does seem high, 50%, but out of 4, the reason why we had two terminated, it was for internal reasons, where their conduct produced an internal investigation by our police department, which resulted in their conduct unbecoming police officers, and they were let go. The other one resigned due to he started his first day at the Las Vegas Metro Police Academy, and he felt it wasn't right for him. It was a little hard. And so he came back and asked to respectfully resign after the first day. The other officer resigned after a few months. He went to Utah, to a southern Utah agency. He was basically a transfer.
Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. I think I had more of a question around, kind of similar. I was looking at your growth. I guess you guys are, from the last census, about 20,000 people. You guys have grown. And so.
Yes, I believe we're at 23,000 right now.
And so, and I was also looking at, so what is your, because I was looking in the slide, when you say, what's your per capita, the officers for your population, how many officers per capita?
Per 1,000. I believe last we checked on that, we are at about 2.5 officers per 1,000.
Okay. So, but in terms of like recruitment, it looks like you have, so I was looking at your 2019, which was your before COVID. You didn't seem to have any applicants.
So in 2019, when Chief Chesley took over the position as the police chief, he opened an open recruitment for lateral hires only. The benefits of hiring a lateral police officer, as Chief O'Shea stated, was that when we hire a new officer, we have to go through the same process of doing a rigorous background investigation. But from that point on, the new officer goes through the academy, which I believe now is about 28 weeks. After which there's a rigorous field training program. We're looking at roughly about a year to a year and a half from the time that they test to the time they are out on the streets and they were working. Whereas a lateral hire, if we do a really good job on our end, which we try really hard to do, of filtering out those laterals who are coming from other agencies because they are running away from something. If we're hiring really good laterals, they stay. And those laterals, once we test and go through that background investigation, their field training is a little shortened. And for a small department in a more of a rural setting, having that lateral officer available to go out and work the streets on his own within maybe a month to 2 months as opposed to a year is a great benefit to us. It works really well in our unique circumstances in Mesquite. So since 2019, we've been having an open recruitment, and when laterals come in that meet the minimum requirements, then we start a background process on them. So we have hired a number of laterals as well.
Thank you for that. So that's the same thing that's happening in 2022? The same lateral hire?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how many
Yes.
total officers do you have?
We have 33 positions, and currently we have 2 vacant that we're still trying to fill. And we have 8 who work in the jail, in the correctional facility. They're sworn positions, but they're not, of course, part of the More Cops or Crime Prevention process. All of those are uniformed officers working with the public, of the 31 that are currently working right now.
Thank you for that. And just a really quick question. I don't know the answer to this, so it's not a gotcha question. Do you guys have the public safety tax override?
Can you say that question again?
So there were tax overrides that were done like way in the 90s. Do you guys have a public safety tax override that was passed by the voters?
A public safety tax override. I'm not familiar if we do or not. I can't answer that. I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, I've just been trying to see like I guess the balance between how much your property tax may go in to your funding and as well as sales tax, that's all. So those were the last of my questions. Members, any additional questions? Okay. Senator Spearman has one more.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So 32 officers, do you all have a recruitment team, or you're looking at 1 or 2 people, or is that their regular job, or how does that work?
Good
I'm looking
question,
here,
'cause
you
we're
know,
such a
with
small-
with respect to diversity, so can you speak to me about that, please?
Absolutely, thank you. Because we're such a small department, we can't dedicate one person full-time to recruitment, but we have what's called our public information officer, who PIO, who is a sergeant with our department, and he spends a considerable amount of time social media. We do what's called a humanizing the badge campaign, where we do a pretty good job of showing the public what the Mesquite Police Department's all about, what we do, and who we want to work for us. So a lot of our recruitment comes through social media and what that PIO does. But again, it's not a full-time position. He probably spends 25% of his time doing PIO, public information work.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, and you said you were new, right? When did you come on?
I was promoted to this position about 2 months ago as a deputy chief. Prior, I was a captain with the police department.
Well, congrats on your promotion.
Thank you.
I didn't have this presentation in 21 because it's just an odd thing to do over Zoom. So welcome to the More Cops sales tax hearings.
Thank you.
All right, so we will move on to our next agency, which will be the City of North Las Vegas. Let me know when you're ready.
Yes, ma'am. We're just trying to get our presentation pulled up for you. And can you see that okay up there?
We can. It looks like
Fantastic.
Assistant Chief Harris, you've grown a beard.
Yes, ma'am, I have. Yes, ma'am, I have. And if you'll notice, it's gray. But moving on. Madam Chair, good to see you again. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate Committee, good afternoon. I am Michael Harris, Assistant Chief of Police for the North Las Vegas Police Department. First of all, I'd like to say thank you all for allowing our department to be a part of this revenue and economic development presentation. With that being said, we've prepared the information that was requested, and I'll begin with our National Testing Network information to start. So if we'll go on to slide number 2, As it relates to applicants who tested with our department, in 2018, we had 688 applicants. 2019, 1,087 applicants. 2020, 885 applicants. 2021, 591 applicants. And in 2022, 413 applicants. And if you would like to go into exactly who participated in the tests and how many people passed, if you bear with me for just a moment, we'll get to that information. As of February 28, 2023, 56 applicants have tested with our department. And if you'd please note that around March of 2020, the pandemic struck, and of course the testing centers in Nevada were temporarily closed down, along with a lot of places in the United States. The National Testing Network testing was moved to remote testing, allowing applicants to test from home at that time. Number 3, please. Regarding our post-physical fitness training, in 2018, 800 applicants were invited. 354, or 44%, confirmed that they would be in attendance, and 286 applicants actually showed up and participated in that post-test. 2019, 546 applicants were invited to participate. 460, or 84%, of the applicants confirmed their attendance, and 373 applicants actually showed up and participated in the test. 2020, 294 applicants were invited, 294 folks confirmed, and 167 actually showed up and participated. 2021, 78 applicants were invited, 59 confirmed that they would show, that was 75%, and of those 59 people that said that they would be there, all of them showed up and participated in the test. And in 2022, 289 applicants were invited to participate. 162 confirmed that they would be there. 144 of that 162, or 56%, participated in that actual test. And as of February 28th of this year, we've invited 111 applicants to participate. 63, or 56%, of those folks confirmed and said they would be in attendance, while 43 applicants actually participated in that test. Number 4, please. As far as applicants passing the PPFT, in 2018, 274 applicants passed. 2019, 330 passed. 2020, 160 passed. 2021, 53 applicants passed. And in 2022, 139 applicants passed. And we have an average pass rate of roughly 93%. Pretty much going back and forth between 90 and 95% every year since 2018. And moving on to the more COPS information, I'm going to pass it off to the City Finance Director to give you that information.
Thank you. We're on slide 5. My name is William Hardy, the Finance Director for the city. I'll go through these fairly fast unless there's questions, but our funds for the more COPS for our Fund 288 in 2018 was $13.8 million. By fiscal year 2022, that got up to $19 million. Next slide. We also wanted to show you the funding for the Crime Prevention Act. In 2018, funding for this was $3.7 million in revenues. And by fiscal year 2022, it got up to $4.9 million in revenues. Next slide. The next few slides, we showed you all the expenditures by category for the 5 years that were requested. As you can see here in 2018, we spent $11.2 million out of a budget of $12.5 million. Most of that is on salary. You'll see that current theme throughout all of these slides. Next slide, please. 2019, we spent just under $12 million on a budget of $13.7 million. Again, mostly in salaries and wages and payroll-related cost. Next slide, please. In 2020, we spent $12.5 million on a budget of $15.2 million. And in 2021, we spent $11.8 million on a budget of $15.6 million. Next slide. In 2022, we spent $12.3 million on a budget of $14.9 million. In 2023, please note that these are unaudited preliminary numbers as of February of 2023, but so far we've spent $7.4 million or $7.5 million of a budget of $14.6 million. Next slide. Again, to be consistent, we're providing the same information, expenditures by category for all of the crime prevention tax dollars. In 2018, it does show that we spent $178,000. Next slide, please. However, as you'll see, in 2019, those were reversed out once a correction was made. We did not have any officers or spending in 2018 or 2019, so it zeroes out to zero. In fiscal year 2020, we did start using this fund to pay for some officers, and we had spending of $115,000 on a budget of $2.0 million. In 2021, we spent $668,000 on a budget of $3.6 million. And just for the record, there is one typo in the slide here. We found this after submitting it, but the clothing allowance of negative $4,178 should actually be positive $4,178. The totals all total up. If you total them up, it was just a manual typing error. In fiscal year 2022, we spent $570,000 on a budget of $2.6 million. And the next slide, in fiscal year 2023, we spent so far, again, this is a partial year unaudited and preliminary numbers, we've spent $428,000 on a budget of $2.3 million. And that's, any questions on the finance slides?
Yes. Senator Spearman.
Thank you. So I guess the first question is, you got overtime that looks like it started in 2020. I was trying to keep up, but 2020, so, and it looks like it's going up, but it looks like it's fluctuating. Can you speak to me about that? Overtime usually means that you probably have more missions than you have people. Yes?
Do you want to?
I'll speak on it. Mike Harris, for the record. Overtime costs have increased based on the growth in population and our ability to keep up with calls for service. We have shift minimums per policy, and in that policy, we have to have a certain number of folks on the road and to make sure that those positions are covered. As people, whether they call in sick or injured or whatever that case may be, we have to fill those positions with overtime. And that's the general reason why the overtime numbers are rising.
So can you speak to me about the ratio between officers to, you mentioned the growth in the city, so speak to me about the ratio.
Absolutely. If you bear with me for just a moment, because I actually took a note on those numbers, and I want to make sure that I get them correct for you. So our ratio in the city is roughly one officer per 100,000, or excuse me, per 1,000 residents. We are at just about 276,000 residents in the city, and that's where we are now, is at roughly 292 officers, sworn officers within the department.
Yeah, and so the total number of officers, did you say 295? 292 officers?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm not real swift with math, so, yeah. I'm sorry, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're just over, with 276,000 residents, we're just over one officer per 1,000 residents. We actually located a DOJ study done in 2020, which says that the average ratio for agencies over 250,000 residents is 1.9. So we're under the recommended number of officers on the agency at this time.
And I think I read something like that in the paper. So, can I follow up? Yeah. So I want to go back here to, looks like, I think it's the recruiting slides. Hold on. I think it's slide number 3. No, I'm sorry, slide number 2, applicants through the National Testing Network. So first of all, tell me what that process looks like, because it's in a couple of the years, this looks like it's pretty wide swing. In 2018, you had 688 applicants. In 2019, 1,087.
Bear with me, Senator, I'm just trying to find where you are. You said on the NTN
It's
stuff?
slide number 2 that
Okay.
I'm looking at.
Okay, I apologize.
That's
And again,
okay.
your question was, I'm sorry?
So explain to me the process, applicants through the National Testing Network. Explain to me that process, because it looks like there's a wide fluctuation here. It looks like 2019 was your best year. So I'm trying to understand what is that process? What do we do in 2019 that didn't happen in 20? Of course, 20 was COVID, but 21 and 22. And 22 was even less than 21.
I'm going to pass it off to Lieutenant Cargile. He's in charge of backgrounds and recruiting.
Yes, ma'am. One of the biggest increases we saw in 2019 was overall, as a lot of it was our own efforts and changes we made to our recruiting process and how we were getting out then on social media and improvements to our website in order to encourage new applicants to test with our department. And so we did see a significant increase that year.
So I think it was Mesquite that said they used the PIO. So is there a point person? Was there a point person in 2019 that did the social media, did the outreach and that sort of thing? You have a team. What happened in 2019? Because whatever you were doing in 2019 looks like it was working.
Yes, ma'am. In 2019, we had 2 officers that were assigned to our recruiting division that helps out, and specifically that's all they do is they do recruitment and help run our social media. And since then, we've been able to maintain 2 officers in that division.
So you had two officers in 2019, and you've had 2 officers since then, and it's been basically the same routine, but you've never been able to replicate the 2019 numbers. And I'm just trying, and you said you got the same process. I'm trying to understand, especially if we're talking about DOJ recommends 1.9 per 100, is it 100 people, 1,000 people, 1.9 per 1,000 people?
Yes, ma'am.
And we're under that. So the best year looks like it was 2019. So what changed, and especially in 22, that was 2 years after COVID, I think that's probably the lowest number, with the exception of, we're just year-to-date with 56 applicants. So what changed? You have the same number of people, you have the same process, but what changed from 2019 to, let's say 2021, okay? I'll take out COVID.
Okay, and that was actually going to be one of my responses, man. And again, Michael Harris for the record. Was the big jump between 2019 and 2020. When you move to 2021, there's still some lingering effects from COVID, but you also have some of the societal events that took place, which you saw a mass departure from the law enforcement profession in both retirements, poor recruitment, and a number of other factors. This is not a North Las Vegas problem. This is a nationwide problem where recruiting has become an issue, has been difficult for everyone. If I'm not mistaken, and not to make an excuse for the city of North Las Vegas, but the other agencies that have sat here before you today have also stated that they've had a little bit of issue and competition, and we're basically fishing from the same hole. What we've done to kind of change some things up, and let me go back to 2019 for a minute. We changed a lot in regard to our social media process and to our online footprint, and to allow us to get ourselves out there a lot more than we had done previously. That allowed us to get more buzz with the city of North Las Vegas and the city of North Las Vegas Police Department. Moving forward, the things I just mentioned to you slowed that process down a bit, and now we're seeing an uptick in terms of recruitment and seeking out new folks, because we are We're having incentive packages brought forward, which is creating some buzz for the city of North Las Vegas and trying to get some folks out there. A lot of it also is similar to what some of the other agencies have spoken about regarding lateral transfers versus new recruits, because the same rules apply. If you look at a new recruit, it takes you roughly 18 months to get a new recruit from application to on the road, boots on the ground, versus a lateral. You can knock about 6 months off that process, depending on how long that background process. And now we have also instituted a modified field training program. So we have the potential of knocking off anywhere between 6 and probably 8 to 12 months-ish off of that process, and we get more folks that way. So those folks, as long as they come from in-state, don't necessarily have to go through the same process as those folks coming from out-of-state in terms of physical fitness tests, national testing network, and all those other things.
I think this may be my last one. So I'm still looking, I'm on slide number 2. So in 2018, you didn't have a recruiting team, and in 2019 you did. 2020, let's kick that out. I guess 21, not sure what that was. Was that the George Floyd era?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So, but then you got 22. Again, I guess I'm trying to figure out whatever you were doing in 2019 looks like it was working, and whatever from that point, something happened because it hasn't been working that well. And I don't know. I'm just looking at the raw numbers. So I'm trying to get the narrative behind the numbers.
And yes, ma'am, and I think you're correct on that statement. And what we've done since then was we got into the 2022, going into 23, we've wanted to reinstitute a bunch of those improvements we made then, but we just, as the years passed, had to increase them, which is with our social media and with our websites. And since then, going into 2023, our numbers have significantly improved because of that. As an agency, we set a goal of having at least 60 or more applicants every month throughout the year. And so far in January of 2023, I know which is not on there, we had 61 applicants who begin the testing process with North Las Vegas, as at least they've sought us out through the website and asked questions about what it is to be an officer with our department. After that, in February of this year already, we've had 105. Then with our increased social media, and I think with our benefits package we're offering now, through the first 2 weeks of February, we're already up to 114 applicants and processing. So we've seen a definite uptick with what we've done, or increased number of applicants from the changes we've made.
So again, I'm just trying to understand. So 2018, 2019, 2020, all the way through 23. In 2018, you didn't have a recruiting team. In 2019, you instituted that, and that team of 2 instituted social media, more of an online presence, et cetera. And this is just, you don't have to answer this question. I'm just trying to figure out what is the difference in, if not the process, then the way the process is implemented, because the 2019 has not been replicated. And that's my last question.
And ma'am, you said we don't have to answer that question, but I'm more than happy to provide some content if you'd like. So, as Lieutenant Cargill was saying, if we continue on this path, the numbers, the 2019 numbers in which you're referring to, will in fact be replicated. And in fact, if we continue at this pace, we will exceed the 2018 numbers. 2019 numbers. And just for the record, we didn't have, I guess, what I would call a recruiting team prior to 2019, but we did have an individual who was assigned. He was multitasked. He was multitasked, but recruiting was one of those things. Similar to the PIO for Mesquite, he had more than one job to do, but recruiting was a part of that. But moving forward, if we subtract, at least if we include 2019, subtract 20 and potentially 21, we're only about a year and a couple of months removed from trying to get ourselves back on track. And again, here in 2023, if we continue the pace that we're at, we will exceed those numbers of 2019.
Thank you for that. Senator Buck?
Thank you, Chair Neal, and thank you, Assistant Chief Harris and North Las Vegas. I was just wondering, you have 229 or 292 sworn officers, and you are short how many?
We are roughly 42 positions short at this moment. We have 42 vacant positions.
Okay. I know that public safety is a priority, it brings quality of life to our communities. I just wondered what would be some things that this legislative body or this committee could do to assist you in recruiting?
I would say the first and foremost, some of the things that you have done in the past with continuing the funding sources, I think would be a huge benefit, as they have in the past, not only for the city of North Las Vegas, but the Las Vegas Valley and the state of Nevada as a whole. So if you would, your support and from that aspect would be wonderful. Other than that, just your continued support, whether it be in forums such as this or in your own daily lives. If you know someone who wants to be a police officer, Senator, I would gladly give you my card and have them send them our way.
Thank you, Assistant Chief Harris. I know that I'm very sensitive to the workforce, how it's hard to fill in education, teachers, our police officers, a lot of our public servants. So thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I have two questions, and then two other members. Senator Spearman has a follow-up, and then Senator Gignate. So didn't you guys change the amount, the entry-level pay back in 2019? I think it was a couple of thousand. I think it went up to like 53 or 51 to 53 or 52 to 54. And then didn't you also change the steps for entry level?
I don't have the numbers, the exact numbers for the pay, Senator. I will have to get back with you on that information. I'm going to take a note now. And you said for 2019?
Yeah, I think it was 2019 that there was an increase in pay for starting. And then didn't you guys also internally try to make changes to the steps? I think in the past you guys have, I think you had 16 steps. I think you might have gone to 8. I don't know. So I think it's different for new versus already inside.
So what you're speaking to contractual
Yes.
obligations? That is continually changing. I don't recall the exact number of steps between the different years. I can get that information for you as well. But yes, depending on which contract you're referring to, yes, those steps have changed.
Okay, because I was asking because it seemed like the increase in pay was an incentive to try to move the needle around getting more people to apply. And just wondering, had there been an increase in the entry pay from that time period? Like looking at 23, because technically we're still in fiscal year. We're not in FY '24. And so your fiscal year runs from July to June, right? So technically your fiscal year started July 22 and then it'll run to June of '23, right?
That is correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so is there an increase, has there been an increase in pay, seeing that your numbers have diminished?
So we are up to 58,000, so there has been an increase in pay for starting. And if you would, if I don't know if you have the supporting documentation in front of you, but if you refer to the recruiting materials in the starting pay, you will notice, we'll see if we can pull it up here and show it to you. We went from 53,380 as a starting salary to a salary of, I'm sorry, Senator, I misspoke. It's not 58,000. It's 56,587.
And so is that 56,587 competitive with the other agencies for new cops?
We do our best to be competitive with all the other agencies within, $1,000 or $2,000 or something to that effect. One of the things that I've noticed when perusing the other agencies is the incentive packages, education bonuses, lateral bonuses, different things like that. One of the things that you'll notice when it comes to those bonuses is some agencies offer them up front. We offer them as a condition of employment. For example, your education incentives and bonuses come on an annual basis rather than a one-time check when you look to hire on. So it's not as though they're not there. We try to advertise them in the flyers to let folks know that they exist. But if folks are just looking at the raw number, the base salary number, our base salary number does not include those bonuses. And that's why we have a range, because it can be up to whatever it is, considering you meet all those requirements.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I'm gonna come back to that conversation because I have some additional questions, but I'll go to Senator Spearman and then Senator Dunyate.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then Senator Dunyate.
Thank you so much, Chair. Before I ask these questions, Chief Harris, I think it's important for me to reiterate how grateful we are for the work that you guys are all doing. But you are the first group of the major population that I'm going to ask these questions for, so I apologize for that. Okay, few things. I want to spend a quick moment talking about retention. So community members have come to us mentioning that there might be an issue of retention both for new officers and for officers that have spent a longer time in North Las Vegas. So are you noticing a trend in North Las Vegas where after officers complete their probation, where they're leaving? Is that an issue of retention that you have seen? Are there strategies to address that? Do you need support from the legislature? What's going on with regards to that?
So I can't give you, for example, a retention rate, because I guess the big question is a couple of questions, actually. What determines the retention rate? Is that when a person decides to leave on their own for family reasons? Is that the person who decides to leave because of medical reasons, for example, a heart and lung bill? Is that an individual who leaves to go to another state because their mother is sick? I can't really give you that answer. However, what I can say is that over the course of the last 5 years, we've had what we consider new hires, 18 months of employment. We've had 56 who've left the NLPD within 18 months. And of that 56, we have 8 that have been rehired, not necessarily as a police officer, but one of the things that we try to do is we try to put people in a position where the city can still benefit, where the community can still benefit from the tax dollars spent on potential applicants. And for example, if someone doesn't make it as a police officer, for whatever reason that may be, we may try to put them in as a correctional officer, or we may try to put them in administrative positions, such as someone working in the detention center as a what we call a LEST. There may be positions in records or dispatch or some of those other positions. So it's not as though they may not be working for the police department, they're still supporting the police department as best we can make that happen. But the fact of the matter is not everyone is cut out to do the job, and a lot of people don't recognize what it is they're getting into until they're actually into it.
Thank you so much. And Chair, if I must just follow up, so let's take the reverse of that. Are you noticing your longtime police officers retiring early? Are there any strategies to keep them and retain them as well because of the shortages that we're experiencing? Is that a conversation you've had within your department?
Yes, sir. So there was, or I should say, nationwide, again, COVID, the George Floyd era, all those sorts of things. You were seeing nationwide a large number of retirements, a large number of people resigning, and that sort of thing. We were no stranger to that. Unfortunately, it affected swaths of police agencies across the United States. To combat that, one of the things that we're looking at as far as closing the back door, if you will, is we're investing in our people via leadership, via mentorship, and again, supporting documentation. I'm not sure if you have it under, bear with me for just a moment. Under the recruiting division information, you'll see that there are training flyers for leadership classes and other things that we're trying to keep our folks. Do they have that? Or can you pull that up? We're trying to pull that up for you now so that you can see it. But leadership classes and mentorship classes so that we can improve the retention efforts within our city. In addition to that, we are looking to start a leadership summit that starts March 29th with the command staff of our police department to kick it off and some of our city management. And then we are hiring on a company from there to make this, I believe it's going to be a bi-monthly thing so we can ensure that all of our folks are getting, or excuse me, all of our supervision is getting properly trained so that they can lead properly, pass on those leadership skills, and with hopes of making folks want to stay and recognizing that we're investing in them and their future and molding the department into what they expect it to be. As we know, there are generational changes. Depending on which generation you're from, you're going to deal with leadership in a different way. And so as people come up, they're going to be able to better deal with and handle those sorts of folks and those sorts of situations that make North Las Vegas seem more like a home than some place where they're just trying to work.
I appreciate that. And Chair, if I just have one more question. I'm going to ask this question for the remainder of the presenters as well. So quick question. I appreciate the contents that you have provided. Does North Las Vegas Police Department have an agreement with or policy with ICE? And if so, can you provide those details to the members of this committee?
I believe we have, and before I completely speak, I'm going to get back to you with the details of it. I believe on our federal, some of our task force officers deal with ICE. I'm not 100% sure exactly what that relationship is and exactly how they are interconnected. So I will have to, I don't know if it's, for example, if we have task force officers in the DEA, I don't know if it's a DEA-ICE relationship and just so happens that we're attached to that group, or I don't, to my knowledge, the North Las Vegas Police Department does not have a direct contact or a direct relationship with ICE, but I will confirm that and get back with you.
Thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate it. And of course, thank you for your service. Thank you, Chair Neal.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So before I go to Senator Spearman and because we're going to have to shift, I have a sales tax question. similar to probably what I asked Boulder. So I was looking at the actual overall budget for 23 fiscal year that's coming, the recent budget. You guys are showing, projecting a loss in your more cops. This is not in your slide here. This is in the actual North Las Vegas budget. So it was showing that you're seeing in the more cops sales tax that you're projecting a 1.7% decrease, or roughly 257,000. And so I was wondering, you know, what, and this is to the finance person who's sitting next to you. What are you seeing as a projection, or what factors are you seeing that are presenting that proposed or projected loss that you think will happen in the future, or by the end of this fiscal year? I'm just super curious because sales tax has been doing really, really well. It's been actually holding up quite well. It's overperformed, and so I'm wondering why are you guys projecting a loss or a decrease in your more cop sales tax?
Madam Chair, I appreciate that question. Yes, I can take that. I do have the 2023 approved budget in front of me, and honestly, I don't understand exactly, because we're projecting revenues of $16 million for the 288 fund, the more cops, and we're projecting to spend $14.6 million. So we're actually expecting revenues to exceed our expenses. And you're absolutely right. Sales tax has been above projections. And so I'm actually assuming that that number is going to be larger for our total revenues.
Okay, because it was, and I don't know if you have that document in front of you, but it was, I believe it's page 72 in the adopted fiscal budget for 22-23, and that's where I saw that number for the more cop sales tax being projected at a 1.7, and then negative 1.7. And so I was just super curious about that, because because it's an indicator, right, of the money that you'll have for new cops that you would like to think about or consider for the fiscal year. And so if your fiscal year doesn't end until June, then there's dollars that you're going to be expecting or planning, and hopefully you'll be able to offset your loss. But I'm just thinking like 23, 24, like your recruitment for more cops and to offset your 42 officers, why that was being projected as being low, because it's not that low, but it's low enough when I know that there's super growth. So I just wanted to know about it.
I appreciate the question. Unfortunately, I do not have the 2022 budget in front of me, if that's what you're referencing. But our 2023 budget for more cops we do project revenues to exceed our expenses.
Okay, thank you for that. Senator Spearman.
Okay. And I'm going to I'm going to piggyback off of my colleague from Senate District 10. I'm a retired MP, and I know it's different, military and civilian, but there's some of the basic things that that work in both worlds. Deputy Chief, this is for you and someone else. So you indicated that it was difficult to know why people were leaving. Do you have an exit interview process? And if you do, what do you do with that information that might tell you why people are either leaving or retiring early?
First of all, Senator, you continually thank us for our service, but I'd like to first thank you for yours, your service to the military in this country. But to answer your question, we do in fact do exit interviews. We've been doing exit interviews since April, I believe it is, of 2021. Unfortunately, the capturing of that information hasn't hasn't followed up until January of this year, where we are tracking that information so that we can do the exact thing that you're referring to, and ensure that we can fix the problems as to why people are leaving. It's been our experience up to this point that folks are leaving for family reasons, like we spoke about a little bit before. Some people just aren't cut out to do the job, in that they don't understand what they're getting into until they're actually doing the job, and they figure it's not for them. And we try to use those folks in other areas of the police department. We've only had one issue with a person who decided that this city wasn't the place for them because they had an issue with a supervisor. We have addressed that issue, sent that supervisor to leadership classes to ensure that sort of thing doesn't happen again. And again, we are continuing to make our leadership the best leadership in the Valley by continually training them and investing in them, and to ensure that these sorts of issues don't happen again. But as far as tracking, that is something that's been taking place since January, and we plan to continue to do that so we can have a better plan going forward.
So I'm going to go back, and it seems like I'm stuck on 2019. So 2019, you instituted a new process for recruiting. I know one of the things that we would do, if you implementing something new, required to have somebody who either had done it before or knew about it to train somebody. So did you have someone to develop the training model for 2019 and train the people for 2019, 21, 22? I guess I'm asking, because I'm still trying to figure out why there was such a swing, and the process is the same. Are the people the same? And was there what was different in 2019? It's a new process. Did you have somebody that was training? Did that person? I think you said that the person was multitasking, so they had more than one thing. So whoever was responsible for training. Are they still there? Are they still the same person responsible for training? Is that training the same? What's the difference? Because I think if we're below what DOJ says where we should be, then that's a public safety issue. And so I'm really trying to figure out how do we fix that? And granted, there have been some things in society that have changed some of the narrative. But I don't know that I would put all of that on, societal changes. So what were we doing? Who was there in 2019? Are they still there? Who were they? People who already knew how to do social media, already knew how to do recruiting? Did you have somebody to come in and teach them? Is that somebody still there? Were they under contract? What were we doing in 2019?
Thank you for the question, Senator, and please forgive me if I miss a part. There was quite a bit to unpack there, but I'm going to try my best to answer it, and please, if I miss something, please let me know. But in essence, what you're asking is, what are we doing to replicate the 2019 numbers? And we've already hit on the fact that COVID has been a problem. Some societal issues have been a problem, which have affected us pretty heavily. And we've also established that if we continue at the pace that we're going now, that we will exceed any of those numbers that we've talked about just a moment ago, those past numbers. So to answer your question regarding training and things like that, no, the same officers are not in that position. However, one of the officers is on the same floor. There is an overlap of officers when they leave the position, which allows us to teach the new person coming in some of the tricks and some of the craft of social media. I have to be honest with you, Senator, the 2019 folks that we got in there, they were innovative, they were forward thinking, they wanted to do some things that were different, that were not what we had done so much from the police department recruiting standpoint. And what they did was they came up with the idea of branding this agency on social media in a fashion that we hadn't done before. They were social media savvy, something that I am far from. I don't even have a Facebook page that I go on, and I don't know how to post anything. But they were able to do all those things. And so when we brought those folks on, we started using some of the and I don't feel like I'm giving everyone else our secrets. We started using some of the things like Indeed and some of the job posting sites, and we, forgive me if I mess up the term, things like boosting and different things like that to promote ourselves towards the top and investing in the recruiting process. Our city leadership has been gracious enough to, I almost want to say, increase our recruiting budget by nearly a factor of 10, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. We are working to get back to those 2019 numbers, but it's just going to take a little bit of time for us to do that. This isn't one of those things, unfortunately, I don't believe that we can just drop in one position and then pick up right where we left off at another. So to again readdress the questions, yes, we did have some folks who came up with some ideas, and a team put together that came up with some ideas that allow us to produce numbers that were unlike anything that we had seen, to my knowledge, from recruiting. Because it's not like when I started, when you had 3, 4, 5, 10,000 people getting ready to try to take a test, and you had to beat out all those folks. It's a different world now. Yes, there is some overlap, so there is some training amongst the different people in that position. There is an increase in funding, which allows us to do a lot of other things. Some of the things that we've done have been something I haven't seen any of the other agencies do, which I think is pretty instrumental, and Lieutenant Cargill was a large part of that. For example, if there's any football fans up there, you would notice that we were in the program for the Las Vegas Raiders. You would notice that we were in the program for the Las Vegas Golden Knights. You would notice that we were in the program for the Pro Bowl that was hosted here. You would notice that we were on the marquee at Allegiant Stadium and at T-Mobile Arena. That's not to say I sit there and watch that and make sure every other agency is there, but I can assure you that we were. We've changed the way we've done business. We've changed the way we've refocused our efforts on how we brand ourselves as far as our web page and social media pages. We've started to include QR codes to make access to our agency very, very easy. It's just a matter of holding your phone up and clicking, and there we are. We've done that in the programs. In addition, we've actually placed, and again, I'm telling a secret, we placed QR codes on our patrol cars. So anybody who's driving down the street can see a QR code and say, that's how you get to the City of North Las Vegas Police Department. We don't make it difficult. We try to make it easy. We're trying to make ourselves more accessible. And again, the forward-thinking work from our current recruiting division is the reason why those numbers are going back up. The reason why they went down was something well beyond our control. But we are bringing those numbers back up. It's not as though we're sticking with those 2020, 2021 numbers. We are increasing that. And if we, again, continue on this pace, we will exceed those numbers.
Okay, thank you for that. No? All right. So we need to move forward, but thank you for the presentation. I had a couple of questions, but I think Senator Spearman ate the time. Because I really wanted to know the crossover between the community engagement team or person who, you know, because I've met them and they're out a lot, and how that community engagement budget is working towards the recruitment. I know it's popped up, probably not just from this side, but from the other side of the house about, you know, getting into the high schools, engaging the high school students and, you know, that 19 to 24 that have graduated, and trying to, you know, build within that workforce component that's out there. We have a lot of workforce agencies doing work, and they're actually housed or close to North Las Vegas, right? And so I don't know if there's a crossover relationship there. I know there was a relationship with Workforce Connections in the past. And I don't know if it's there now, but it might be some things to consider, because if you look at the Ring cameras, there's a lot going on, probably closer in that, you know, 89084, the Legacy area, Legacy High School area, because we have a lot of I don't know. There's just an increase of nighttime activity, and they're young kids roaming. And so I think we need to have a conversation around, getting into the high schools, and then what are I looked at the budget and the Safe Streets program. I don't even know if that's even, super active at this point in the game. But really trying to figure out how we're going to engage on one side and then the recruitment on the other side for the young people who might be in a better position to be trained for the population that is growing up in North Las Vegas. So.
Absolutely, Senator, and we appreciate the time. If there are no further questions, we appreciate your time. Or would you like me to take a moment to address what you just said?
No, we can talk about it offline. Appreciate
Yes,
the
ma'am.
beer.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you so much for the time. I think I grew a gray hair sitting here, just so you know.
Wow. All right, so we will move to Metro Police Department and call to the table Mr. Hogan, the CFO. Let me know when you're ready to go. Are you ready?
Yes, Madam Chair, just waiting for the
You can't.
presentation.
Okay, we can see it up here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay. great.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. For the record, my name is Rich Hogan. I'm the Chief Financial Officer with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. With me is Lieutenant Trish Cervantes. She's the Director of our Office of Human Resources. So between the two of us, hopefully we can get all of your questions answered. Before I kind of jump into the formal presentations, just a real high-level overview of LVMPD and kind of who we are and what our responsibilities are in terms of our jurisdiction. We are the police department for unincorporated Clark County and the city of Las Vegas, essentially everything but the other entities that are presenting here today. We also are responsible for the Clark County Detention Center. So we have what we would call internally would be our enforcement side and our correction side. On our enforcement side, we have 3,362 police enforcement positions and 1,320 civilian positions. On our correction side, we have 930 corrections officer positions and about 359 corrections civilians. So that's just kind of who we are real briefly and what we are responsible for. So just a quick overview in terms of the history of the More Cops and Crime Prevention Act, particularly as it relates to LVMPD. As the committee members, I'm sure are all familiar with, without rehashing it, we had the first 0.25% increase levied in 2005. We hired for 578 officer positions between 2005 and 2010. As we all know, we experienced the difficulties with the prolonged recession. So that by July 2013, that number had decreased to 504 that we were able to support with that revenue. And in 2015, we supplanted for that one fiscal year of 147 positions. In other words, we moved 147 positions for one fiscal year from the operating fund to the More Cops Fund, and then they returned in fiscal year 16. The second, as we call euphemistically, the More Cops, was levied in 2016, January 2016. We added, at the time, 133 positions. What I'll state is fairly remarkable is that we hired for all of those positions by April 2017. Since that time, the revenues have been able to support what we currently have, which is 795 authorized positions. Next slide, please. That brings us to the Crime Prevention Act and a little bit of overview on how that relates to our general fund. The Crime Prevention Act, of course, as the committee realizes, was levied 2.1% was levied in April 2017. We added 267 positions. And right off the bat, and another 23 in 2018. We have since been able to increase that to 311 positions. What's important to note here, it's a little bit different than the other entities, is that there's a formula that's included in the Crime Prevention Act that carves out a portion of that revenue to support positions that are in the resort corridor. The resort corridor essentially is what you think of as traditionally the downtown resort corridor and the strip resort corridor. So currently, of those 311 positions, 233 are dedicated to community positions and 78 to the resort corridor. These positions, in addition to our operating fund, are what we have utilized to maintain a authorized officer to population ratio of 2 officers per 1,000. That's excluding the tourist population, which is certainly a big part of our policing responsibilities. But since 2016, just to kind of give you an idea of how we've also utilized our operating fund, we've added 223 positions in that operating fund since 2016. So in total, since fiscal year 15, which is when we had the more cops and subsequently the Crime Prevention Act, along with the positions in our operating fund, we've added 756 positions. There's been a lot of talk about recruiting challenges, certainly things that I'm sure the committee will have questions on later, and Director Cervantes will respond to, but we are currently hovering on our enforcement commission side. We're hovering around a 5% vacancy. We've narrowed that gap a little bit from 7% at the beginning of the fiscal year to 5%. But really the biggest driver of that is not only for police but for our civilian positions is we just have fewer applicants. So in fact, on the police side, we have about 75 fewer applicants than we did in the years previous to essentially the departure of the baby boomers from the workforce in 2020. Next slide, please. This is just a brief overview of the accountability requirements. I don't mean to belabor this. It's something I'm sure you're all familiar with, but just wanted to let you know that we do make every effort to comply with that. Our positions are separated from and the revenue and expenditures associated with those are separated and accounted for separately. We comply to the supplanting provisions and the information that we're required to report on quarterly. Next slide, please. This is the final slide. I just kind of want to give you an idea, and this does bear one explanation. What this is intended to express is how the addition of police officers does, in fact, reduce crime. In fact, as you can see from the lines on this graph, there's almost an inverse relationship, with the red line being violent crime and the blue line being our officer to population ratio, and that's assigned officers. as opposed to authorized positions. There's almost an inverse relationship between an increase in officers and a decrease in violent crime, and that inverts the other way. So there's a little bit of a lag, obviously, between those two. I did just want to bear out one explanation. There's a strange little line on the far right of that. That's because the way crime was measured was changed in 2021. So it's going to start its own new line there because we don't measure crime the same way. The FBI changed how a crime is reported in a pretty significant way. But nonetheless, you can kind of see that same trend on that little line. So that's it for the formal presentation. Be happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you for that. So we'll take Senator Doñate.
Thank you so much for that presentation, and again, want to thank you all for your service. I actually had the opportunity during the interim to do a ride-along, and so it's interesting to see the correlation of the subject area that we're talking about today and how that relates to the subject matter that you have presented in your slides. Same question, in terms of retention, are there trends that you're noticing with officers after they complete probation? Are there any strategies that you have done in terms of exit interviews? And then we could also do it from the same lens, but like, are you noticing officers leave retirement earlier? Are there strategies to keep them just a little bit longer? So from both lenses, please.
Yeah, great. Yes, again, Senator, thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Rich Hogan, Las Vegas Metro Police Department. I'll do my best to answer that. And if Director Sabrantes has anything to add, I'll turn it over to her. But in essence, yes, we have certainly seen some issues with retention of our current employees. 2020 and 2021, we experienced the same thing that I think every employer in the United States experienced, the great departure, the great resignation. So we saw a very large number of employees across all of our all types of employees, whether that's correction or civilian or police, separate in that about a year and a half period. However, that has kind of turned the corner. That rate of separation has slowed to what it was previously. I would say that we're, in terms of the demographic of the person separating, or in terms of the years of service, we have seen an increase, 2018 compared to 2022, an increase in people with 6 to 10 years of service leaving, that we did about 11 percentage points difference, which on a percentage point basis is pretty significant. So the years of service of our workforce has certainly changed as a result of that, right? We have a whole lot of folks with low tenure because we didn't hire during the recession, then we hired a lot, and then we had a lot of people with high tenure leave. So that's a long way of saying, anyway, I'll kick it over to someone who's a lot more articulate than I did.
And I'll speak to a little bit, for the record, this is Trish Cervantes for Metro. I'll speak a little bit more to the retention piece. We really have, obviously everyone knows we have a new sheriff, Sheriff McMahill, and one of his main focus has been wellness for the officers specifically, because we think that will in turn impact the community and how our officers treat the community, which is the most important thing. So that has been a huge piece of the Wellness Bureau, is what we are building is in this retention program. So what that is going to do is really kind of tackle mental health, which we know has become an issue for law enforcement. Well, I shouldn't say become. I think we're just more putting it out there and to deal with it in the forefront versus kind of pushing it back. So that has been something that we're really trying, especially to the younger generation, really get them to understand that we want to keep them healthy, mentally, physically, everything across the board. And I think in that piece too, I know you've probably already heard it from North Las Vegas, but mentorship was a big piece of it. We are unique as an agency as we have so many opportunities for young people, and that's a great way to retain them, is to show them all the the endless opportunities that you have at this agency. Like, I was a person that has had that opportunity to go to multiple different bureaus and have a successful career for about 22 years. So we're trying to show them what long-term looks like, versus a lot of these younger people want to see instant results and want to have instant gratification. So we're kind of fighting both sides with all these agencies across the country that are giving out ridiculous incentives of, like, 60 grand just to come move here, where we can't compete with that. But what we can compete with is keeping them healthy and well and giving them a long career.
Thank you for that. Senator Spearman.
Thank you, and I think you just addressed something that the chair said with respect to community engagement, especially with the younger folks. So I'm looking at the graph, and I don't dispute that there are more officers needed, but I'm of the opinion that that's probably a third of the equation, and part of the other piece of the equation is probably police community engagement with the community. And I'm looking here at an article, and I'll make sure I give it to the secretary so it's a part of the minutes. It's Volume 1, Issue 1, February 2nd, 2023, and the title of the article is Community Engagement and Crime Reduction Strategies, A Tale of Three Cities. And they show that the more that there is engagement between police and the community, that crime does go down. Because one of the things, and I'll go back to something that Deputy Chief Harris said, and that is, the image of law enforcement has really taken a beating over the last decade, and that is because we have had some people who don't deserve the badge, and they don't deserve our loyalty. But I think what's happening is there are some agencies that are starting to have a zero tolerance policy for crazy. And the more that happens, and the more that there's engagement, then as the community trusts, and as there's a diminishment of blight, those are some of the other strategies that are used. So having said that, is there any long-term plan that includes, number one, community engagement, number two, when you start looking at planning and zoning and the housing crisis, employment, and those sorts of things, and bringing those social determinants in as a part of the plan to reduce crime? Does that make sense?
It does, and I'll step in a little bit, and then let Director Lieutenant Cervantes step in too. So, yes, again, Senator, through the chair, for the record, Rich Hogan, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Really good question, and thank you for asking it. We, several years ago, set up the Office of Community Engagement with just that purpose. We have a number of police employees and civilian employees that are dedicated to just that effort of community engagement. But more so, and even more importantly, to your point, what's also included in that office are embedded therapists and social workers, people that work in concert with our employees to support efforts to assist people who are unhoused, to assist people who are experiencing a mental health crisis, people who are experiencing substance abuse. And the city and county have been good partners in helping us work together towards that end. But in addition to that, I would add each of our area commands, the captain in each of our area commands, that would be areas that are responsible for a portion of our jurisdiction, do a tremendous amount of community engagement. And as an administrative lieutenant, then Lieutenant Cervantes did a lot of that, so I'll kick that over to you to talk about that.
Yeah, so this isn't anything new to us. We have definitely, that has been our mantra for as long as I can remember as a young cop. I was a COP sergeant and obviously a lieutenant over COP as well. as Mr. Hogan said, yes, every single area command has a large COP footprint. And then on top of that, and I can say because I have a subcommittee, we also deal with the Multicultural Advisory Council, who we work hand in hand with. They meet with the sheriff and executive staff each month, but then on top of that, we have subcommittees, which right now they're helping me with a subcommittee on recruiting. So it's basically somebody from every walk of life in our community that can give us partnerships out in there. One of our most recent, probably really successful one was with Nevada Partners, letting us go out to their location, test in their location, and having them ask people to come see us. Because sometimes when we as cops say come see us, they go, I don't know. But if they have somebody in their own community that is vetting for us, that it's more powerful. And so that community partnership that we have goes so far, and that's why I think we have been successful. Yes, our numbers did dip after the virus and then obviously the riots, but I think we are seeing, just as North Las Vegas said, our numbers are starting to go back up, and that really is truly because of this partnership that we've had with our community. And to go back to the riots, I think we did such an astounding job compared to every other city because of the fact our community partners stood up with us and said, no, this is not what our community is about.
Thank you for that response. So I just had a quick question on the resort corridor. When you're talking about the increased positions of up to 311 right now. And so when we talk about like new cops that are potentially in the resort corridor, do you have a number for who's potentially in that resort corridor? Are they more trained or are they newer officers?
Yes, thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Again, for the record, Rich Hogan, Las Vegas Metro Police Department. The officers that are working in the resort corridor would be representative of the same cross-section of officers that are working in the community. We don't, officers are assigned based on essentially as positions become available, officers will, based on seniority, apply for those positions. So we don't, I would say that the officers that are working in the resort corridor, if you were to poll the years of experience, it's going to be very much the same as officers working in other area commands.
Okay, thank you for that. Because I just wondering, because there's a lot going on ever since we've had the Raiders Stadium. We've had increased homelessness. We had record numbers of tourists who I think they were like, if I'm going to live my last life, it's going to be in Vegas. And they came in droves. And so we've had, there's been a lot of, I would say, tourist contact, homelessness contact, drunken sports team, fanatic contact, where it's just like, I'm going to make it across Russell regardless if there's a light. So I wanted to try to get into that a little bit because I think that is more challenging. And, when you're newer, I think you have a different approach than someone who's more seasoned, that's been around and seen a lot more behavior. And so that's why I wanted to ask that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I will, again, Madam Chair, for the record, Rich Hogan, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Certainly, one of the images I can't get out of my mind was a presentation that was given to the County Commission several months ago of some behavior on the pedestrian overpasses. So yes, there are some folks that are behaving, acting the fool, I guess. Yeah, we have not necessarily dedicated officers that are more seasoned there, but we do work very closely with our resort corridor partners. Do you have anything that?
Yeah, I'll speak to Trish Cervantes for the record again. And I'll speak to a piece of that too, is our training is hands down, obviously a little biased, but very, very good for our officers, and we train everyone the same. And we expect the same to come out of every single one of our officers. So whether you're tenured or you're junior, you need to know how to deal with humans on a human level. And so that's what we expect from them. But they are also exposed throughout field training to the tourist corridor, to the community corridor, so they get to see a vast variety of all the different sections of our valley, and then they can decide where they want to work. But we do, as Mr. Hogan said, we don't dedicate and just say only senior people can work here, because we expect the same performance out of every single one of our officers.
Thank you for that. And then my final question is on the recruiting challenges, saying 75% fewer applicants. I guess I was looking for more of a number, because I hear a lot that most transfers are coming to your agency from other agencies. So people want to work for Metro. Mainly, you have a higher salary. And in terms of the organization and how it is, grown and matured, there is more of an interest in coming there. So do you identify which agencies are coming over to Metro from North Las Vegas or Henderson or vice versa?
We really haven't seen one more than the other, except for maybe NHP or Nevada. But it's really not one higher than the other. I think mostly when people come over, it is just for what you said. It's because we're a larger organization. We have more of a future to offer them when they do come over. But nothing specific that we are gathering.
Okay. Because I think we're all trying to, I think Senator Spearman asked a few questions around exit interviews and really trying to get an understanding on the interagency shifts and are the vacancies happening because they don't like the culture in one, and so they're moving to a culture that they believe is better at another agency. And so maybe it's a future conversation to have. I know we have in other committees, there's police legislation, but I don't think they're addressing any of those concerns.
So again, Trish Cervantes for the record. A few of us from some of the agencies across Nevada actually got together for recruiting efforts to kind of build a list for the governor to say, hey, these are some of the top priorities, the things that we are aware of. For example, PERS was something that we were seeing some people leave for, because now it's a longer time for new officers to be vested, whereas in another state, they can be there within a few years and they're vested. So that those are things that we're looking at long term, which will be given to Governor Lombardo. But for us, it's basically just that. It's if we are seeing a big, and we're really not, a huge people leave, it's just because they want that instant gratification. But then in turn, I'm normally getting an email within a year and a half saying, hey, this was not what I thought. Can I come back and be a rehire? So.
Okay, thank you for that. And then we'll take our final question, Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Neal, and thank you so much for being here today. I notice as I'm out at sporting events at T-Mobile, the Raiders, that, out in traffic, that we see a lot of officers contributing and being part of overtime. I was wondering how this impacts your staffing shortage.
So we've actually reached out to our partner agencies across the valley. So if we are unable to staff it, so first off, we staff our own agency. Overtime is just overtime. That is outside of the.
Thank you for that. And so thank you for your presentation and coming, presenting to us. We really appreciated the presentation, and we will close out Metro and move to the city of Henderson. Good afternoon. We can see your presentation up here. Can you see it down south?
Yes, we can.
All right, welcome to the table, Interim Chief Blow.
Yes, good afternoon. For the record, I'm Michael Blow, and I have the honor of serving as the Interim Chief of Police for the Henderson Police Department. Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Dignate, and members of the committee for the opportunity to join you today to share some highlights about the Henderson Police Department and discuss the use of our proceeds from the Clark County Sales and Use Tax of 2005 and the Clark County Crime Prevention Act of 2016. As you know, Henderson is the second largest city and also the state's largest full-service city, providing police, fire, EMS, parks and recreation, public works, water and water services to our citizens. Henderson is Nevada's second largest city and also the state's largest full-service city, providing police, fire, EMS, parks and recreation, public works, water and wastewater services. Henderson is also nationally recognized as one of the best cities in which to live and consistently ranked as one of the safest cities in America. Our community survey consistently rates community safety as one of the top issues for our residents, and it remains one of our highest strategic priorities. The City Council and city leadership have invested significantly to maintain strong fire and police departments, dedicating almost 60% of our operating budget to keeping our community as one of the safest in the nation. The Henderson Police Department is one of the most technologically advanced in the country, nationally accredited through the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, also known as CALEA. Our residents report more than 90% satisfaction with police services, as well as in the competence of our officers and feeling safe in their neighborhoods from violent crime. We will be opening our 5th police station in Henderson this spring, which will include a state-of-the-art communications center, as well as the Henderson Police Department's training facility for our police academy. And we recently broke ground on the HPD's new forensic laboratory and evidence vault. We added 37 positions to the force last year and have plans to add another 37 in the coming year. Police recruitment, as you know, is a national issue right now, but we are striving in this area to increase our resources and keep both our residents and our officers safe. We are also in talks with Governor Lombardo about a program that can help retain officers that are post-retirement to use their expertise in training new officers. In addition to the reference material that we've submitted, we prepared a brief financial presentation for you, and I would like to now introduce our Director of Finance, Maria Gamboa.
Thank you, Interim Chief Blow, and thank you, Chair Neal and members of this committee. For the record, my name is Maria Gamboa, Director of Finance for the City of Henderson. Thank you for inviting us to be with you here today. Our first slide depicts the City of Henderson's allocation of proceeds from the Clark County Sales and Use Tax Act of 2005. The pie chart indicates where the money goes, reflecting the period including fiscal years 2018 through 2022 as requested by the committee chair. A few key points to note. The total use of proceeds during the period were $85 million, with 91% of the proceeds going to salaries and benefits. 57% of total expenditures were allocated to salaries and 34% to benefits, with most of the remaining percentage related to the service and supplies, primarily consisting of minor equipment and operating expenses to ensure officers hired are fully equipped for duty. The small percentage attributed to capital outlay represents vehicle purchases for new positions as needed. Documentation of the expenditures on the annual basis has been provided to the committee for your review. However, year to year, they are consistent with salaries and benefits representing the bulk of all expenditures, as these funds are dedicated to staffing new officers. Next slide. As mentioned, the bulk of the city's expenditure goes towards staffing. The slide shows a breakout of the number of police officers staffed from the Clark County Sales and Use Tax Act of 2005. The table is divided between vacant positions, meaning a position that is not currently filled, and a filled position for which an officer has been hired. Staffing includes 115 positions out of the proceeds from this fund for the period of June 30th, 2018 through June 30th of 2022. A relatively static number is The relatively static numbers primarily due to uncertainty related to the pandemic in fiscal years 2020 and 2021. Beginning fiscal year 2022, as the uncertainty of the pandemic gave way to a large economic recovery that resulted in an increased tax receipts. The city provided additional funding to authorize 15 positions that had previously been frozen due to funding constraints. In fiscal year 2023, we added an additional 7 officers to the fund and are anticipating hiring even more officers as we prepare for fiscal year 2024. Next slide. Our next slide relates to the use of proceeds for the Crime Prevention Act of 2016. This pie chart shows where the money goes, reflecting the period including fiscal years 2018 through 2022, as requested by the committee chair. A few key points to note. The total use of proceeds during this period were $18.1 million, with 87% of these proceeds going to salaries and benefits. 52% of the total expenditures went to salaries and 35% to benefits, with most of the remaining percentages going to service and supplies, primarily consisting of minor equipment and operating expenses to ensure officers hired are fully equipped for duty. The small percentage attributed to capital outlay represents vehicle purchase for these new positions as needed. Documentation of the expenditures on an annual basis has been provided to the committee for your review. However, year to year, they are consistent with salaries and benefits representing the bulk of all expenditures, as these funds are dedicated to staffing new officers. Next slide. This slide shows the breakout of number of police officer staff from the Crime Prevention Act of 2016. The table is divided between vacant and filled positions. Staffing increased from 26 positions as of June 30th, 2018 to 38 positions as of December 31st, 2022. Similar to the Sales and Use Tax Act, the staffing remained static in fiscal years 2020 and 2021 as we navigate the uncertainty of the pandemic. However, as a result of the increased revenues in fiscal year 2022, we began to fill additional positions, adding 8 new police officer positions between June 30th and December 31st of 2022. Additionally, we are anticipating hiring additional officers as we prepare for the fiscal year 2024. With that, I'd like to turn it back over to Interim Chief Blow for our final slide.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Maria. And again, Interim Chief Michael Blow for the record. The pie chart on this slide depicts the current diversity of our community as a whole. As this table indicates, the diversity of our Henderson Police Academy graduates has improved greatly over the last 5 years. I'm proud of our department's significant efforts in this regard. However, we certainly understand there is a lot of work that remains to be done, and we look forward to continuing that focus. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, and that concludes our presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you for that. I have Senator Dunyate.
Thank you so much, Chief Blow, and of course to your team members that have prepared this presentation. Same question that I asked to North Las Vegas. Retention. Are there strategies that you're having for the retention of your police officers for the ones that are leaving after probation? And then are you seeing trends later on for your older officers? And what are the strategies to keep them from retiring early and so forth? So if you can tackle the retention question, that'd be great.
Yes, sir. We're trying to maintain all of our officers, the ones with 2 minutes of tenure, right to the ones that have over 30 years of experience. We're doing that in several ways. First and foremost, as you've heard from the group, we're very concerned about their mental well-being and that of their families. So we will be opening a new state-of-the-art wellness center in conjunction with the fire department that'll be coming here in the next couple of months. And in that facility, not only will they be able to receive their annual physicals, but there will also be staff that will be on point that will allow them to deal with any other types of mental stress and issues they may be faced that they may not be comfortable sharing with their supervisors. In addition to that, we are, as I stated earlier, the city has taken the lead in terms of having discussions with the governor about some form of a drop program that would allow us to maintain the tenure and the experience of our older officers. Certainly, as you have earned the privilege of retiring and you put in 25, 30 years, many officers do consider retiring. And certainly we want to have another option for them to think about staying on with the agency and continuing to share that experience that they've gained over the years with the younger officers and with other officers who are making their way through the ranks and through the other opportunities within the agencies. Also, we've established several committees. And the reason that is important because one of the things that we want to do is to make sure that we are continuing to get the ideas of officers, again, whether they have 2 minutes of tenure, whether they have 30 years of tenure. And some of those committees, for example, with equipment and policies and other things, we want to continue to get those ideas so that we can stay fresh, and we can stay contemporaneous with some of the trends and patterns that we're seeing nationally. Additionally, we're also attempting to send officers to additional training, whether it's the FBI Academy, the Southern Management Institute, or whether they're narcotics classes, communications classes, whatever types of classes that are offered that are appropriate for our personnel. We certainly want to make those types of things available as well. So that's sort of the tip of the iceberg in terms of our retention strategy. But again, we're looking at training, we're looking at wellness, and of course, we're looking at communication in that three-prong approach to make sure that we are staying on top of the retention issue.
Thank you so much. And Chair Neal, if I can ask one more question.
Yes, sir.
This was the same question I asked to North Las Vegas. Does the City of Henderson
Yes, sir.
Police Department have an agreement or policy with ICE? And if so, can you provide that with us? That's pretty much my main question.
Yes, sir. We do. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I cut you off.
That was pretty much it. Please proceed.
Yes, sir. My apologies for cutting you off, sir. Yes, sir. We do have a contract and agreement with ICE to house ICE detainees in our facility, in our jail. And currently, we do have 79 detainees in our facility. With that being said, with that contract, we are under very strict guidelines in terms of maintaining meals, medical care, and the overall well-being of those detainees. We're inspected regularly to ensure that we are meeting those standards, and we certainly take all of those provisions very seriously.
Thank you for that. And so just to try to, I guess, dig into that just a little bit, even though I have different questions. From Homeland Security, there was a retention memo that basically there was, I guess there's an open complaint alleging the violation of civil rights and civil liberties of detainees that are in the custody of Henderson Detention. Do you know about that?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair Neal. For the record, David Cherry with the City of Henderson. May I ask, do you happen to have a date on that report? I don't believe I have information in front of me, but I certainly can gather that for the committee and supply it to you.
The date of the retention memo is March 15th, 2022.
Very good. I believe that I have some information that I can get you relatively quickly about the findings there was a follow-up done. It's my understanding that there was a follow-up done to each of those reports that have been done in the past. As the chief spoke to the committee about, there are obviously standards that must be maintained in there, and we are regularly inspected to ensure we're meeting all of those requirements, and there are reports issued if there are any findings or any allegations. There's then follow-up done, and that's all documented. So I will make sure to get that information to you, Chair, and the members of the committee.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my next question is on, I'm going to ask about the demographic slide at the end for the new, so when I look at women, you've had a decrease from 2018, really it's 2019. So it looks like in 2019 you had females at 17, which is 39.5%, and then in 2022 you have a drop down to 9, which is 11%, and then for African Americans you were at 2 in 2018, then there was an increase in 2020, and then a drop down to 2 at 4.1%. And then an increase up to 7, but still lower than 2020. So can you guys talk about what's going on in terms of the recruitment? And let me pepper this with this comment. So Henderson is growing by leaps and bounds, right? You guys get a lot of the Californians that come, New York, other states that move because, number one, it looks or is, appealing to those new residents. And so your demographics have changed drastically. It's not like you have the old part of Henderson, then you have the newer parts, but you have clear communities of color and women. So what's going on with the recruitment around these individuals?
Well, Madam Chair, as I indicated earlier, we have a long way to go. And as you see, the percentages certainly mirror the percentage of the city's demographics, but certainly those numbers are what they are, and we have to do better. And if I could just talk about a few of the things that we're doing to try to achieve that. First and foremost, from a technological standpoint, our recruiting division, and that consists of 6 officers and a sergeant, we're beginning with the technology piece. And they're using something called geofencing. I can't even begin to explain the technical piece of that because I'm technically challenged. But what I will say is that what that allows us to do is that allows us to go on various social media platforms with our recruiting information to a certain demographic. So, for example, if we're trying to recruit people from Baltimore or Detroit or Salt Lake City or wherever we're trying to, or from areas where HBCUs are, we are able to use that technology to get our message out to that particular demographic and hopefully encourage them to apply to our agency. Also, we've also reviewed the entry exam, Madam Chair. Prior to his retirement, Chief Andres was looking at some of the areas where some of our minority candidates were experiencing difficulty with success with the test. One of the things that he saw was that there was, in particular, with the video portion of the test. Again, this was just prior to his leaving, and we were exploring the feasibility of how we could look at the percentage, the weight percentages of that particular portion of the test in terms of having a more successful experience for the candidates that were taking the test. And we've also, as you notice, and I think we included that, we revised our recruiting video. If you notice, the recruiting video does reflect the diversity, not only of our agency as we move through our recruiting and academy process, but it also reflects the diversity of the city. And in addition to that, as we are moving through some of our interaction with our high schoolers and also with some of the local colleges, College of Southern Nevada, Nevada State, and other places that we are having interaction, we are also taking those opportunities for recruiting and engagement with members of all of our diverse communities throughout the city of Henderson. So as I said, we absolutely recognize that we have work to do, and we are going to continue that work. As you know, there will be a new chief coming in soon, and I'm certain that the new chief will also pick up the mantle in that regard and to ensure that we continue along the path of trying to ensure the agency is reflective of the city we serve.
Thank you for that. And just really quickly, because I want to address this, because we've lost 2 chiefs in a short period of time. So prior African-American female, and then we just recently lost Chief Andres. So when you say there's a long way to go, what I've been hearing from, I guess, officers, not you, and I don't want anybody to say, oh, well, Chair Neal asked this question, and so Interim Chief Blow must have said something, because he did not. Because I haven't talked to him in a while. Is that there is a race problem, and it is racism going on within the actual PD. And that the challenge that the prior chief had and why he resigned or decided to leave was there was a lot of protests. We all saw the newspaper articles. We all saw, the newspaper article that came up prior with the African American female from Texas, and Andreas was her assistant that came from Texas who then remained on. And so I don't know if that's being addressed at all, because there seemed to be a climate issue, and it's a climate that has race entangled in what's going on over there.
Well, Madam Chair, I can only answer that question with the information that the chief has provided me, and that is that he retired after many years of service, and he was honored to be the chief here. And certainly after 30-plus years in the business, the chief determined that it was time for him to retire. Certainly, there were some concerns that were expressed in the meeting that I think you were referring to, but I think there was also there was a willingness with the chief and others to work through those issues. But the chief did determine at that particular time that he was ready to retire. He had been in the business for over 30 years, and certainly he speaks fondly of the agency, and he shared with me his gratitude of being able to have the honor of serving as the chief.
Okay. Well, I know members might have questions, but we have another committee coming in. And so I want to thank you for, number one, presenting. I think there was a sentiment that individuals hope that, being with your former FBI experience and background, that you would become the next chief. I don't know if you ever wanted it, but I think that was the sentiment that was presented to me, that they believed or they wished that, you would become the next chief of Henderson, versus them doing an outside person and bringing someone in because of the diversity that's needed, and trying to, I guess, prove the point that an African American can lead the agency forward and stay there for a long period of time. And so I know this is what I've heard from people who live in Henderson and what they've brought up to me. And so I'm just going to close it with that. And I thank you for coming. And once again, I'm going to do this disclaimer. No one, I am saying my own words without anyone or Interim Chief Blow addressing any issues with me or bringing up any issues with me. I'm pretty open, and if that was the case, then I would absolutely say so. And so these are my own words, and I'm saying things that were told to me by residents that live in Henderson. So, and I'm going to close out interim revenue. But thank you, Mr. Blow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And could I,
yeah, go ahead.
Do you need me to respond to that?
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Well, certainly, I'm certainly humbled by the confidence, but I will say that it has been an honor being the interim chief, and they will be selecting from internal candidates, and we have some very talented people within the Henderson Police Department, and I'm sure that they're going to do an amazing job and take the agency to new heights. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. All right, so we will close out these presentations and close and then open up really quickly for public comment, and then we have to get out of this room. Is there anyone here for public comment in Carson City? Is there anyone in Las Vegas for public comment? In Vegas? Okay. Is there anyone in public comment for Carson City? If you come to the table, please. You have 2 minutes. Yeah, it's 2 minutes all the time. Yeah, thanks. Just state your name for the record and turn on your mic.
William Graham Carter, C-A-R-T-E-R, representing myself. I came here to talk to you about thinking outside the box, but I'm from Las Vegas. I was at a meeting called by all the first responders in Henderson begging people to vote for Kerry Cox because the city was not supporting them. Well, police officers were leaving right and left, firefighters were leaving right and left. The developers had seized control, and they would build a firehouse against public lands. You should build it where they can go out in 360 degrees. It seemed like a real mess over there. I'm interested in the legalizing street vendors thing, and I want to tell you my thought, which is build community. And I was thinking government is kind of adversarial. Well, you've got to pay to go take a class to get a health permit. Why not pay them $10 to take the class? Why not put a case of hand sanitizer in the back of a police car and have them drop it off? And you got the cop back on the beat like it used to be. Cops in the neighborhood prevented crime, and I think we need community. The old cop with the belly club, oh, you're dating that Susie, you ought to marry her, but if you don't, what the facts of life, they were the people who maintained sanity in the community. But Henderson advertises themselves to be the second safest city in the nation, but LA gangs are targeting Henderson because the police is so weak there. That's what I found out at that meeting.
Thank you for your comments. All right, anyone else? We will go to BPS on the phone. Is there anyone here on the phone for public comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If you'd like to provide public comment, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Once again, if you would like to provide public comment, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers willing to to give public comment at this time.
Thank you. So we will go ahead and adjourn the Senate Committee on Revenue.